the army. Then he said aloud, "Who wants to proceed to paradise? Paradise is under the shadow of the swords and the arrows. Today I shall meet my friends. Today I shall meet the holy Prophet Muhammad and his party." Ammar was moving ahead, and other warriors were moving behind him, and all were advancing. The sun was about to set, and the only light that could be seen in the extensive horizon was the luster of the sword and the sparks of the blows. Once again Ammar decided to take rest, and it was the moment when the last rays of the sun were shining on the stream of blood, and its crimson rays were being reflected on all sides. At that moment, before Ammar could take rest, his eyes fell on Amr, who was carrying Muawiyah's standard on his shoulder. Ammar was reminded of something and shook his sword. Then he struck his hand on the back of his standard bearer and said, "O Markle, I swear by him under whose control my life is that even if these people are in a position to annihilate us by dealing successive blows, no weakness will take place in my faith, because we are right and they are following the wrong path. O Markle, the standard which Amr al-Az is carrying on his shoulder is the same against which I have fought in the company of the Holy Prophet, and it is the 4th time that I am campaigning against it." Then he made an attack and said to Hashim, Utbah Markle, "O son, advance, advance. May my parents be your ransom." During this terrible fighting Ammar did not rest even for a moment. He fought on and persuaded his soldiers to do the same and ordered them to attack. He continued attacking the enemy like deadly lightning till the 3rd day of the battle arrived. On that day the fighting reached its climax and continued unabated. For the self-sacrificing warriors who accompanied Ammar, it was immaterial whether they killed or were killed. Ammar, the old man, who was 94 years of age, was fasting, and despite this, he made deadly attacks on the enemy and pushed his standard-bearer Hashim forward. Hashim insisted upon him to hand over the command and responsibility for attack to him and to take rest for some time to get rid of the fatigue caused by fasting, but Ammar shouted at him and said, "O son, may my parents be your ransom. Advance." Anyhow, as a result of the severe and continuous attacks by Ammar, the cavalry of the Syrian forces fled. In this combat Zul-Kala, Humyari, who was the commander of the Syrian army, wavered and lost the power of resistance in the row which was the target of Ammar's attack. When the news of Zul-Kala's hesitation and fear reached Muawiyah, he summoned him and deceived him with the assistance of his minister, Amr al-Az, and 2 persons took oath that what Zul-Kala had heard about Ammar and had reported was true, i.e. the prophecy of the Holy Prophet that a rebellious group will kill Ammar, but Ammar would at last leave his own army and would join the army of Muawiyah and Amr. Hence, Zul-Kala had no alternative and must partake in fighting. They also assured him that eventually, when the dust of the war had settled, he would see that Ammar had arrived in his Zul-Kala's row. Incidentally, they also told him that if the prediction made by them did not come out to be true, he would be entitled to continue to remain hesitant in the future wars, and that he would have ample time for this. On the 3rd day the battle came to an end, and Ammar, as steadfast as ever, remained busy and fighting like a champion. When the sun was about to set, and the night called Laylatul Harir arrived, Ammar asked for water to break his fast. A vessel containing milk was brought for him. Before drinking milk, he smiled, and it might be said that his soul shone with that smile. In an ecstatic and happy condition, he said, "My friend, the Prophet told me, your last food in the world will be a gulp of milk mixed with water." Ammar drank the milk and then made an attack along with his military column and hastened towards paradise, which was embodied and perceptible in his eyes. There he saw the Holy Prophet receiving him as he used to receive him previously in this world. There is a great probability that Muawiyah had fixed a big prize for the head of Ammar, so that he might be relieved of the embarrassment caused by the grinding argument which existed in the minds of the army personnel, just as he had ordered that all should guard the head of Zul-Kala, lest he should receive any injury, and he had also promised awards for the safety of Zul-Kala. Anyhow, if Zul-Kala had remained alive after Ammar, he would have created a great difficulty for Muawiyah, and he could not satisfy him by any means. And the most important thing was that the tribe of Zul-Kala, and the number of its members exceeded that of all other tribes. In any case, Ammar, while he had no Guardsmen to protect him drove forward dauntlessly like a lion and, on having reached the battlefield, said with a loud voice, "Is there any combatant here?" At that moment a mounted soldier belonging to the tribe of Sakasak came to fight against Ammar and was killed at his hands. Another horseman from amongst the Humyaris came in the field and he, too, was killed by Ammar, and all others who came thereafter met with the same fate. Abul Ghadia Juhani, who had been on the track of Ammar since the days of Uthman, came near him. At this moment the cuirass of Ammar had fallen aside from his thigh. This man availed of the opportunity and gave a blow on the thigh of Ammar. Two other mounted men attacked Ammar simultaneously and put an end to his life. Anyhow, one of the particular pieces of good luck of Bani Umayyah was the coincidence that at the moment when Ammar was killed, Zul-Khala was also killed. Ammar's martyrdom was a sorrowful event for the members of both the armies. One of the effects of this tragedy was that the defensive movement of Muawiyah's army came to a standstill and the sound of the epic verses recited by the army of Ali reached the sky. Before Ammar was killed there were, in both the armies, persons who entertained doubts in their minds, but after he was martyred truth became evident to them. As a result of this tragedy, anxiety and agitation prevailed in the minds that ended in the retreat of the Syrian army. Muawiyah and Ammar were then compelled to deceive their own army by means of misinterpretation and, in order to remain immune, delude and deceive their opponents in another manner. However, if during these critical moments fate had not predominated, history would have adopted a course other than that which it did, owing to the hypocrisy and discord of Ash'ath ibn Qais. When Abul Ghadia killed Ammar, voices rose from both the camps saying, "O Abul Ghadia, woe be to you! It was you who killed Abul Yaqzan the pious man. May Allah kill you." Muhammad ibn Muntashir said to Abul Ghadia, "O Abul Ghadia, on the day of judgment your enemy will be a mighty enemy with a strong hand." The only reaction of Abul Ghadia was that he laughed and went his way. Hannah, a servant of Umar ibn Khattab, says thus about himself: "In the beginning I was with Muawiyah and his companions used to say, Allah forbid, in no circumstances shall we kill Ammar, because if we kill Ammar then, as it is said, we too shall be regarded as a rebellious group." On the day the Battle of Siffin ended, I was walking about amongst those who had been killed. Suddenly I saw that Ammar ibn Yasir had been killed. I went to Amr al-As and saw him resting on his throne. I asked him, "What have you heard about Ammar ibn Yasir?" Amr said, "I heard the Holy Prophet saying, a rebellious group will kill Ammar." I said, "I swear by Allah that Ammar has been killed. What do you say now?" Amr said, "It is a false claim." I said, "I have seen with my own eyes that Ammar has been killed." Amr said, "Let's go and see. Show me his dead body." I took Amr al-As up to the dead body of Ammar. On seeing the corpse of Ammar, the color of the face of Amr al-As changed. Then he turned his face and began walking and said, "Ammar has been killed by the person who brought him in the battlefield." Khuzaymah ibn Thabit was a witness to the battles of Camel and Siffin. He did not draw his sword in either of these battles and remained neutral. However, after Ammar was killed, he said, "I have now become convinced of the rebellion and deviation of the Syrians." Then Khuzaymah partook in the battle and fought till he was killed. Each of the two horsemen who had assisted Abul Ghadia in killing Ammar were trying to take from Muawiyah the prize which had been fixed for the head of Ammar. Amr al-As said to both, "You two are fighting for the fire of hell and nothing else. I have heard the Prophet saying, one who kills Ammar and one who takes his clothes off his body will both go to hell." Muawiyah interrupted Amr al-As and said in a reproachful tone, "What you are saying is a dangerous jest. These two persons are fighting on our side and you are telling them that both of them will go to hell." Amr said, "I swear by Allah that this is a fact, and you also know it. I wish that I had died 20 years earlier than today." When Abdullah ibn Amr was returning from Siffin along with his father and Muawiyah, he turned to his father and said, "Father, I heard the Holy Prophet saying to Ammar, a rebellious group will kill you." After hearing these words, Amr turned to Muawiyah with a peculiar malice and said, "Do you hear what this boy is saying?" Muawiyah said, "Have we killed him? This is not at all the position. I hope people, who brought him into the battlefield have killed him. Then the two slight persons laughed. One day, Amr al-As said to his companions who had gathered round him, I wish that when the Holy Prophet breathed his last, he might not have hated anyone, so that Allah might not send any person to hell. His companions said, what we felt was that the Prophet loved you and appointed you to governorship. Amr said, Allah knows better whether he loved me or was kind to me just by way of affability. However, I observed that he loved a particular man. Amr was asked, who was that man? He replied, he was Ammar ibn Yasir. Then he was asked, was he the same man whom you killed in the battle of Siffin? Amr replied, yes, by Allah, we killed him. Anyhow, after Ammar was killed the Syrians were leaving their own standard and were scattering, and as they did not wish to be styled the rebellious group they were mixing with the people of Iraq. It was at this juncture that Amr al-As endeavored to test the intelligence and insight of his king, in respect of this difficulty and in the meantime to strengthen what he had injected in the minds of the Syrians regarding Ammar and to confirm the constancy of their power of insight. Muawiyah turned his face from his minister and went to his army, stood at the head of the row and said to them, I am going to speak to you about the most sensitive matter of the day. This is the most important of all the topics and it concerns the hadith regarding the rebellious group which is being passed on from one mouth to another. It should be known that the hadith relating to the rebellious group is to our advantage and not detrimental to us. All of you should come to your senses and ponder carefully over the hadith of the Holy Prophet. No doubt the rebel stings us and we have become subjected to reproof. Well, let it be so. But it should be asked, are we not the same rebellious group who have risen to avenge the murder of Uthman and have been touched on account of that man having been oppressed? Yes, we are a rebellious group in this sense. The hearers heard this bombastic logic of Muawiyah and were convinced. The Syrians then departed with a light heart and a tranquil conscience. Amr al-As laughed and appreciated Muawiyah's skill. Ammar's martyrdom created a tumult in the Iraqi camp and the echo of this tumult draws a most vivid picture of the condition and position of Imam Ali. It is not necessary for us to discuss this point. As soon as the news of Ammar's martyrdom reached Ali, he began weeping. Then he looked at those present round him and said, how long did you wish Ammar to live? It might be said that the commander of the faithful wanted to ask, how long did you wish Islam to live? Then he stood up and went towards the corpses of those who had been killed and reached by the side of the dead body of Ammar. At that moment he expressed grief over the martyrdom of Ammar in these splendid words. Any Muslim who doesn't consider the event of Ammar's being killed to be great, and doesn't treat it to be a painful tragedy, won't be recognized to be adult and mature. May Allah bless Ammar on the day on which he embraced Islam, the day on which he was killed and the day on which he will rise from earth once again. I saw Ammar at such a position that if the companions of the Holy Prophet were reckoned to be 4 he was the 4th and if they were 5 he was the 5th and none of the companions of the Prophet doubted this. Paradise has become essential for Ammar and his entitlement to paradise did not depend on 1 or 2 instances. It has been said, Ammar is righteous and truth is with him. To whichever side Ammar turns truth turns along with him. One who kills Ammar will go to hell. Anyhow, Ali ordered that the funerals of Ammar and his standard-bearer and aide-de-camp Hashim Markle might be placed side by side. He then offered prayers for both without bathing their bodies and thereafter they were buried in Siffin in 37 Ah. When the commander of the faithful, headed toward Siffin, a terrible thirst came on his followers. The water with them had been used,